We're gonna do um, answering and questioning today, um, and I'm gonna do more of these AMAs as we go, and less of the monologue type of spaces as we go, because this creates a feedback loop that I very much enjoy. Um, and as you know, the question is sacred, so to speak, right? The quality of the question and the allowance granted by the question to provide a fitting answer is um, a very sacred exchange to me, and it it should be to anyone who has ever done any sort of preaching, to say it roughly. Now, Uncle Jack is a little bit sick, as you might notice from the tone of my voice. So you will forgive me if I've, you know, if I cut out here and there sometimes to catch my breath, so to speak. But more importantly, um, I received a whole bunch of different types of questions regarding philosophy, and physiognomy a lot, and mysticism on my last post that I did. So we're going to basically break down all of those questions um, on this spaces, and we're going to answer them. Um, my goal as of now is not to, how to say, become a household name or grow my account or have 300 billion followers. My goal right now is to escalate and to fortify the minds of those who are here. Um, People I call friends, distant friends, but regardless, yeah, friends. And I know I do these at weird times, but whenever they're intuitively accessible, that's when we'll do them. So, you know, if you're rewatching this later on, you know, it won't have lost its zest, so to speak. So, all right, let's get right into it. There's a lot of questions we have to cover, but I'll do a little disclaimer before we do. Like primarily when we're asked about why the question is sacred, some people might also have get that question, and I always say that um, the question is um, the key that unlocks the child's curiosity in the sense where um, it morally and ethically sometimes feel unright and unjust to provide information a person might not want to hear or might not be ready to realize within themselves. So it's very important to understand that it's part of wisdom to ascertain when wisdom should be imparted. Excuse me. And when different types of universal laws or esoteric truths and so on and so forth should be imparted onto another. And I know there's a very big temptation moment when you know something that is, how to say, um, um, that changes your worldview, that is rather a sort of an immense truth that you've managed to figure out throughout your life, and you want to share it with the world, and you want to share it with others, and its grandiosity, so to speak. But maybe others aren't ready for that grandiosity, and that sort of that lesson comes from gaining an understanding that your words, you're not as small as you think, basically, right? And your words have, um, quite an effect on people, right? Things you say, how you say them, when you say them, where you say them from. Um, and as you grow in your years and you grow in your mission, you also need to understand that um, sometimes the the results aren't necessarily what you feel like they would be, right? Whenever you share intimate knowledge or intimate information. So the question dissipates all of that. The question removes that problem. Um, the question is your favorite thing, basically, as someone who has imagined themselves as some sort of teacher or educator. You love the question because it removes that moral weight from the answer. So it is a sacred divine thing. And like we spoke on the last one, what before we get to the questions, um, this grandiose theater that we call life and civilization and so on and so forth, all this is basically orchestrated by um, divinity and fate, but not in the sense where you will say that, oh, well, everything is under, God, and everyone knows this. But why I say this the way I do is because you have to understand that where we live is at the brink, at the middle point of clashing of the archetypal masculine and the feminine energies. These are the two separated charges, the two separated, uh, how to say, transcended aspects of creation itself and God itself, clashing onto one another, the male and the female. And the result of this is um, disorder and dissonance. Um, Whenever two energies clash, like they do in our world, some very interesting things happen. And the result of that could be unity and union, unifying union, and the birth of the child or the new world or the new earth, or as I say, the heavens themselves are sustained by this constant clashing and conflict. If you want to give birth to a third energy, then you must slam into one another like two galaxies smashing into one another and dismantling most of what they are to then grow and create more, right, of what they are. So knowing that we're in this process and knowing that we're approaching sort of like a critical mass event, so to speak, of this process should give you some sort of spiritual pride, so to speak. You've made it, right? We've made it. We're here. You've built your spaceships. You've done your homework. You did the best you could with the hand that you were dealt, as all of us have, in truth, even the worst of us. And you're here. And now it's more about creation. So okay, let's get to the questions, or I'm gonna rant on for 2 hours. Um, so the first question we got, or I should say the last question we got, but I'm gonna start from the bottom up, is from Gahartha. Uh, and he asks, can you truly help others, or can they only help themselves? Should we bother trying, or how should we go about it? So I feel like this is a question that's been answered many times before. And of course you can help others. What what is the purpose of intertwining our fates and destinies and our ability to truly touch another than to give us the capacity to help them? So I feel like this question gets misconstrued a lot because of course you can't help someone who's chosen to pull themselves into a situation where they don't want to come out of. But of course, you can help those who want to be helped. But there's also wisdom in understanding how to help someone. If you overhelp someone, you weaken them in the long term. So it's important to understand who to help, and when and how to help them. As long as your intention is there, as long as your intention is pure, right? You won't overhelp a person because you know that that's damaging them as well. We're so sick. But that's what makes this fun. Um, but yes, of course you can help others and you should help others, but you should help them to the extent, and you will become better at this as time, with time, to the extent where it will empower them in the long term. If you overhelp someone, and if you provide an an excessive amount of aid, you will just make them dependable on you, both emotionally and materially. That's not your goal. That's not how we help people. How you help another person is you educate them about the things that they're lacking and in deficit of, and perhaps you can show them the way. right? You could tell them if you go to this place and do this thing, perhaps you will find what you're looking for. So, in truth, the best type of help is giving directions. If you can give good directions, the person will be thankful and they will walk their own path. Most problems for most people come from them not knowing where to go, right? They just don't know where to walk. So then that becomes sort of like a loss of a sense of purpose. Now you could pick them up and take them there if they need to go, for example, if they're unable to walk right now, so long as they are thankful and show gratitude. But you won't be there to do that for them every time, right? So it's important for them to understand that um, they are being helped, but they're also um, being equipped with a sense of responsibility towards themselves and you, right? To not require the help over time to get better, right? So there you go. Yes, of course you can help others. If someone has decided that they're going to lead a life of destruction, right? They've chosen that. And how you help them is making it very clear for them that they have chosen that. And I understand that could be painful for some people, especially when it comes to loved ones and family members and relatives and old friends. It's important for them to go through the pain, right? They need to walk that road alone because that's the only way they can understand the path they've chosen. But you can't help them in the way of serving as a window for them through which they can see the alternative route, right? So as long as you're there as a positive example, and you've reached out your hand, so to speak, um, you need to have the wisdom and the emotional know-how to watch someone you love be in pain for a temporary amount of time in order for them to truly understand the results and the consequences of the the path that they've chosen. And I don't mean consequences in a condescending way. I mean that it must be made brutally clear for them and very evidently clear for them what their choice is. Because a lot of the times when confused people or lost souls, they cast choices into the world. It's very impulsive. They don't really want it. They feel or think that they want it, but they don't. So they must be put face to face with the choice. And then you can help them get out of if they ask for it, so to speak, right? Um, and again, I'm not speaking out of my ass here. I've had situations like that, unfortunately, in my life where I've had to watch several loved ones go through very difficult times and difficult moments, and even places akin to death or dying or coming close to it, even right. So you need to have the inner strength to execute and practice the wisdom, right, and to practice the true help. And the true help sometimes is painful for you, but it is also a display of affection and love for those you care about. And they will know that. They will see that eventually once they've hit the wall. Um, they will latch on to that love. Uh, all right. The next question is um, from Ace. How does someone get a more prominent brown? I guess he means brow and cheekbones. Yeah, I love questions like this because they sort of like connect like the physiognomy with like the face reading and the looks maxing thing. Um, no one gets a more prominent brow or cheekbones. Now, um, are there mechanical things you can do that will perhaps enhance these imprinted elements on your face that you already have? Um, Meaning, can you fix your imprint that is rather underdeveloped? Yes, you can. And there are people who do it all over the internet. Is there an excessive point of doing this? There's an excessive point of doing anything, right? Think of one thing that doesn't have an excessive point of of, of you doing it. You won't be able to. So, of course, there's an excessive amount that you can do. Understanding what your imprint is, accepting it, and then realigning the facial structure, that can be good to a degree. But if you become addicted, and if you go excessively hard, and if you change your energy completely, right, that will reflect, of course, on your outward expression and your energy and your charisma and all of that. And I don't mean this in a positive way. I mean this in a negative way. Never go to excessive lengths when it comes to that. And I will explain that later today as well as we talk. Um, Generally, the brow and the cheekbones, a lot of people, especially men, want them to be like very highly expressed because they think it's some sort of, uh, I don't know, like an augmenter of dominance and some sort of assertiveness, and to a degree that might be true. Where if you have a more prominent brow, for example, it gives you a certain willpower, right? Whether that willpower is aimed, like directed at like inwards or outwards, that you read that from different elements of the face. But yes, it gives you a certain type of willpower that allows you to become a little bit more assertive. But but that also has its drawbacks. But my dearest friends, you have to understand. Uh, like we say, look at the physiognomy of the imp or the depiction of anything demonic, right? It has all of the masculine traits, all of the masculine um, traits, completely excessively enlarged. So you have to understand that what you're doing it also comes with a trade-off. Now, how to get them is, you know, input output. Um, yes, you can do mechanical changes to your face. Um, I suggest just a little bit because how the facial structure works is basically it's like um, these bunch of bones, like little continents, right? And they're tied to one another, and they can be slightly stretched out and stretched in, and whatever remains between these continents, so to speak, the body can it has the capacity to fill that back up, so to speak. But again, you go too far from your imprint, and you're just screwing your energy up. Um, that is very evident to me with people who do it. And some might say, "Oh, I look more like a model. I look more like this and that." But do you look like yourself? That's the most important question. Do you look like yourself, or do you not look like yourself? If you don't look like yourself anymore, then probably something's off, um, or feel like yourself, I should say. Um, so yes, if you want to get a more prominent brow or cheekbones, well, become assertive. Practice on your willpower, on willing yourself and others to achieve great things. Inspire them to do so through your example. Suffer through life a little bit. And cheekbones, people with, well, especially men in this case, who have prominent cheekbones, they're also suffering from a trade-off. Do you understand what I'm saying? You'll be more touchy feely. Yes, you'll be more physically present and involved in the situation. You will be expected to consciously activate situations, which a lot of men, especially confused young men, I think, want because they misconstrue that for some sort of dominance because their idea of dominance is dominating a physical space as much as they're able. But then, someone else walks into the room with more prominent brows and cheekbones, and then they crumble, right? Um, you'll never get to that point where you'll dominate every room you get into because every room is different and you are different. So I would say forget about that and practice um, understanding your imprint and then improving it to a certain degree and then accepting it. That will give you so much more charisma and so much more presence than um, fake making your face. Right. Um, until we get to the next question. I'm gonna pour myself some tea here. I'm gonna mute myself because it's gotta be loud. All right, much better. Um, how would you differentiate between intuition, instinct, and impulse? I would say that's rather straightforward. Instinct is the intuitive sense of the body, so to speak. It's sort of like a memory encoded database where instinctively or instinctually, I'm not sure what the correct term for that is, your body understands how to behave under specific situations. Instinct is the action that happens before the thought occurs, so to speak, right? So, like, instinct is removing your hand from a burning fire. You understand? Now, impulse is a different thing. An impulse is as much as someone can be impulsive, like at least physiognomy, that's how you have it. They also have a capacity to be spontaneous. So a lot of impulsive people are also very spontaneous, and they can have a very strange type of charm and effect over people. So depending on how that impulsivity is expressed, it could be someone who's incredibly charming, super spontaneous, who's a lot of fun, so on and so forth. Or it could be someone who's impulsive and cannot control their emotions or desires. And someone who is impulsive doesn't have um, the threshold is very low towards action. So it's not just that when like at least the physiognomy, if someone has a trait that shows that they're impulsive, that they're going to act out on every impulse they have. No, they also have to be an action based archetype, right? So, like what we talked about, if someone has a prominent brow, right, and prominent cheekbones, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be impulsive at all, even though they're fully action based. They have a penetrating force, a penetrative type of energy where they can go and bring themselves into situations and change the status quo. But let's say if someone has a triangular shaped or triangular influenced uh, jawline, so to speak, right? And they also have traits of someone who would be highly impulsive, right? Then yes, they would most likely their instinct and their impulse would activate at the same time. So they would instinctively act impulsively. Now, this is usually a person who doesn't have the charm of someone who's spontaneous, but also has the negative trait of someone who is emotionally unstable, someone who acts before they think. These are usually your physiognomies where we'll say, well, this is probably a dangerous person. Not dangerous in the sense of like physically, let's say, even dangerous, but dangerous in the sense where if they become sly and deceitful and um, you know, morally misaligned, they might act on their intrusive thoughts and desires. So you have that. And intuition is one of the higher compasses of God, so to speak. If you know uh, my system that says the compass of your fate or the compass of your soul, right? You have four of these things. You have north, west, east, south, and respectively, you have desire, ambition, intuition, and conscience. Intuition is one of these. Is one of these points that life has given you. I call it the lesser God within you, right? The conscience is your other lesser God. Now, an intuitive sense is a deep innate knowing, right? Um, or a momentary understanding of um, a thing or event or the essence of a thing, right? So when your intuition speaks to you, and intuition has many different languages through which it communicates with you, when your intuition speaks to you, you must listen to it because your intuition will only speak to you when your ambitions are misaligned. You understand what I'm saying? And conscience will speak to you as well if your desires and ambitions are misaligned. So conscience and intuition are the two things that align you back on your fate and on your mission, and they work against the other forces of desire and your deepest innate desires, I mean, and your highest ambitions, as in the ambitions of the ego. They are mechanisms, so to speak, to that serve to so this cross that's created between these four things. They're mechanisms that exist to help you align with where you're where you think you're supposed to be going. So that's how you differentiate. Um, Spiritual implication of twins. So I don't know much in the sense of what the full spiritual implication would be of twins, or that if all twins have the same spiritual implication. Um, Obviously, there's I always call it incestuous amplification, right? When there is a certain type of closeness, an extended or enhanced level of closeness between two humans, um, in comparison to others, right? Because all humans are close to one another as is, like by default. But if we're talking about the spiritual implications of maybe like for parents, like having twins or being a twin and so on and so forth, it is the uh, it is the careful, cautious birth of one energy split into two. And we know that the twins are connected a little bit more, like psychically and telepathically, to one another as well. They both serve as a sort of um, a bridge realm um, into the realm. They form a bridge between one another, firstly, and then between their ancestry and the higher intuitive selves. Um, And there could be variations of this, right? So let's say like brother and sister, sister and brother, two brothers, two sisters, maybe even more. So it's a, in my opinion, and again, I haven't studied this extensively. I'd be lying if I told you that I did. It's not something that I'm particularly interested in. But from my vantage point, from the vantage point of the context of the meaning of life, you could say that the spiritual implication of twins is that um, they are here as representatives of a similar vein or channel of energy, and they need um, more hands to do their work, so to speak, right? If you're giving one hand, like, let's say I'm given one hand, they're given two, and they are meant to bridge a gap, an intuitive gap, and a mental gap, um, and a spiritual gap, and a psychic gap, right? Firstly, between one another, and then between whatever that psychic gap is uh, within the context of what their fates are and what they came here to do, right? Some people are born. I know a lot of people who are born as a twin, and one of their twins perished. Like they died early on, and that's also a very unique type of circumstance to be born and raised into, right? To to feel unwhole and then to perhaps find a different type of wholeness and those types of things. I also know people who are deep spiritual practitioners and who are into the occult who have also had a twin, and the twin died, and then they still held some sort of psychic or spiritual connection with that twin, even though they weren't physically there anymore. They served as a spiritual bridge or a psychic link. Um, you know, so that's having experienced that and know that is what makes me say the things that I say, where um, you know, they serve as bridges for one another in this life and maybe the one after. um, let's see, a little bit of a argument in the comment sections. Can full purity of heart, and this is from Zyrexos, can full purity of heart, enlightenment, and according to actions completely change a physiognomy within one lifetime? Do you believe people can overcome and essentially nullify their physiognomy by participating more in the psychological or spiritual side of life and betting on those? So That's a great question, and I'm gonna answer it a little bit rudely. If you're betting on anything on life, you don't understand life. You know, uh, again, like the young mind competes because it's the only thing it understands. Like it thinks it's playing a game, and you're supposed to beat life somehow. Like, oh, I'm betting on this and I'm betting on that. It's especially in the Western world, it's all about efficiency and self improvement, and a lot of the important details like get lost uh, in this pursuit. That's why I don't like this pursuit because I feel like most of the people who do get into, well, firstly, physiognomy, because that's like the most uh, so like mainstream understanding of face reading, right? And then they'll get into face reading, maybe. They have this idea of it that like its primary function is to well firstly judge themselves and then judge other people and then create some sort of preconceived notions or biases for themselves through which they could judge the world and use that as a lens to judge the world. So it's very important to um, understand that physiognomy and your face, which is the imprint of your soul, quite literally, just stuck in time for now. Let's say it in that way, in a simple way, is not something to be overcome. It's not something that needs nullifications. It's something that needs understanding, firstly, and then embracing. Uh, so, is there such thing as full purity of heart? No. Is there some such thing as pure and total enlightenment within this world? Well, of course not. Look at the word enlightenment. You must become enlightened, right? You must become light enough to slip through the quantum realities of this realm, the heavens, so to speak. So it what you're asking is unachievable, but it's something that can be strived for. They can strive towards it. So again, physiognomy and well face reading is all about acceptance, understanding of what hand you're dealt, and then playing that hand. For example, if I'm looking at a person and I know they've been dealt a bad hand in poker, does that make them a bad player? No, it doesn't. And when we say bad hand, I'm saying that their advantages and the benefits they hold within their palms are less apparent than others. So they have to do what? They have to put in more effort, a creative sense, in the game to play it well. So some imprints in archetypal physiognomy, they need to embody their imprints to maximum capacity because their imprints already showcase their best selves. And then if you're born with an imprint, for example, such as where I have received feedback from other people and they would sometimes tell me that like, oh, like when I saw you first, like you had a scary type of aura, you had a scary type of energy, you had a scary type of I thought you were a bad person type of thing. I had that, or I have, I should say, that type of physiognomy. Um, if I embodied that, right? If I embodied the programming that others projected onto me because of my Saturnian imprint, so to speak, right? Of course, I would end up thinking that the world is an immoral, unjust, aggressive place because, well, that's what I thought for the longest time. But understanding physiognomy and face reading means understanding that sometimes you embody your imprint and sometimes you embody the opposite of your imprint. Then what is the opposite of my imprint if I have a scary disposition that unnerves others, right? I will embody gentleness and calmness and love and warmth, right? And when I do that, it not only um, fixes the issue, so to speak, right? But it also elevates it. My charisma, my charm, my energy, my how convincing I can be is elevated to the highest degree. And I'll tell you something else. There's also a trade-off. If you have what you would call in your language, I would say an easy imprint. There's a certain point to where the easy imprint can take you in terms of being naturally charismatic and convincing. But if you have the opposite imprint, if you have the bad imprint or what you would call and embody the opposite of that, the threshold or maximum capacity is higher for that. That's why it's difficult. So if you can manage and accept yourself and then manage your imprint and embody the opposite of whatever your imprint is, if you feel like you've been dealt a bad hand, you're going to be the most charismatic person in the room. And, funnily enough, you might look like a bag of potatoes. I know a lot of people who look like a bag of potatoes, and they are immensely charming, right? And they're immensely energetically powerful and present. So, yes, people with bad physiognomies can be saved. Uh, Even if you look like a negative stereotype, like you say, um, even if you feel like you had no choice in how we look, everything is an advantage. Wisdom means being able to see that advantage for what it is and then accepting the lessons life has imparted onto you through giving you those advantages or disadvantages. If you have a bad hand or what an inexperienced player in poker would call a bad hand, right? You put a pro in there and he'll play the table like it's nobody's business. He's gonna find the angles and the perspectives and he's going to have the psychological know-how to play the game so well that he ends up with all the chips in his hands, right? So that's sort of like how physiognomy works because he's holding a weak hand, but he embodies the opposite of that. He plays the game of life with the opposite attitude, and uh, everyone is under their mystique. You understand? They'll say, "Wow, what a great poker player! He was dealt a crappy hand and he won the whole game. How did he do it?" And if I were dealt a good hand, like let's say some people have what you would call good physiognomies, I would say that well, they were expected to win, of course, and the charm and the charisma isn't as strongly contrasted. You understand? But if the person with on the table with the worst hand wins, ooh, so think on that. Um, 1 second, apologies. Had to blow our nose there. What is your favorite piece of art, or the ones you like the most, if you can't choose one? This is a great question, but come on. So I've had many favorite pieces of art, and when we talk about art, let's say we could only talk about like visual arts or music and so on and so forth. I believe there are so many masterpieces out there that people don't know about. The last one, and you guys know that that I really connected with visually was the uh, the giant painting from NC Wyeth that I posted a while back. I love the story behind it, and that's my recent favorite. You understand what I'm saying? Like I have many favorites, and I could go on for hours and hours. But I think that has that sort of like childhood nostalgia and that innocence, and that it envisions the mind of the child very well. Well, all things are possible, and all things are incredible, and all things are so majestic and grandiose. And I really connected with that painting lately. I think that that is something a lot of people today need to be able to uh, imagine and envision imagery in the clouds, so to speak, and make beautiful things of things that are already beautiful, right? To give them meaning. And the child understands that intuitively that it is capable of assigning meaning to these things to for their life to become magical. And what is magic? And what is magical? Magic is something that happens on a miraculous quantum layer that is rather unexplainable through the logic of the ego. It is something that is assigned meaning and symbolism by the child that has a true and genuine effect on their inner world and their consciousness and their emotional state. So the moment you lose your magic and truth, and why children are such a big component of ritualistic magic, even, is the moment you lose your inner child, the moment you lose that sense of awe and how to say uh, purity, truly, right? Um, in regards to life and in regards to the symbols of living, right? Is the moment you tend to sway, you know, uh, toward losing your magic a little bit. Um, in terms of music, I listen to all types of music. Um, there are incredible pieces, and I have such a heavy dislike for. And I'm a student of music, and I used to be a student of music, and very involved in music, in the musical arts. So I have a very big dislike when sometimes I would call them ignorant people when they sometimes will say that there are these frequencies, and that there are like some forms of music that have bad frequencies and other forms that have good frequencies. And listen, you don't need to know much about music to understand a thing called distortion. Is that thing that comes with your electric guitar. Now, distortion is called distortion because it distorts the first layer of music. It creates a depth. It creates a chaotic layer to form a soundscape. And beneath that soundscape is where the beauty and layering hides. So just because there is some form of music that has this sort of distortion, let's say extreme forms of music, some forms of jazz, some forms of hip hop that make use of this distortion, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that they don't affect the the human consciousness in incredibly like virtuous ways, or that they somehow negatively affect the molecular form of this or that thing. It's because their frequency again is hidden behind a distorting effect. So of course, if you wanted to, test sound and test different types of music on on water or on its molecular level, you would of course want that to be very prominent, the sound. So the more prominent you make the production and the mixing of a song, the more prominently um, it will not be distorted, and you will have that molecular effect. But to think that some music and some songs are somehow evil and terrible. It's all theater. When you're watching a TV show and you're watching the antagonist do horrid things to his enemies and his opponents, is that a terrible bad thing by default? No, it's just part of the narrative and story. It's grandiose storytelling. That's what art is. So if you cannot differentiate between the tried and true under the physical and material understanding of something that is bad, right? Let's say bad in your language, and something that is part of theater, right? Then you won't have the capacity to understand the true depths of music, for example, right? So, for example, there is a song. Uh, by an extreme metal band, for example, called Cradle of Filth, and the song name is Bathory Aria. It's about Lady Bathory, and um, I would see that song as a masterpiece as well, because the amount of emotion, the crescendos, the musical dynamism of that piece, the incredibly extreme vocal performance, and how it's done. That is a clear cut masterpiece of music if you truly listen to it as an artistic piece. Of course, it talks about macabre themes. It's a revisitation of the energies that embody the the blood drunk life of this baroness who bathed in the blood of her prisoners, so to speak. But if you could look at it as a form of art, it is a true masterpiece. Another extreme metal song, for example, you could take like that is "Land of the Dead" by a lesser known band called Summoning, which is an incredible piece of music, and it has that distortion effect, and it doesn't sound good to the ears because it's not clean. But that's for a purpose, because within your imagination, it is there to form us a depth for soundscape. If you can, if your ear can become accepting of that, tolerant of that depth, you will see that is what you would necessarily, what you would look at, probably on your first listen is something that's very grotesque and macabre. You would see the beauty and the musical beauty and the artistic value even in the lyrics of these works, and you would see how great they are as pieces of as separate pieces of art, right? So art in that sense requires depth of spirit and depth of mind, and you need to grow a tolerant eye and a tolerant ear, and you need to be able to differentiate between different types of art. So let's say I would never be able to say like the first example I did, that like the giant painting is good art. It is in the sense of like, it has good energy, which objectively it has all these nostalgic, melancholic, childish sort of like vibes to it. And then I can't go and say that Cradle of Filth, that song from them has bad energy. I could never say that because both are pieces of art, and pieces of art require a different type of understanding. They're not directly correlated with good and bad. Okay. Um, Next question is from Ryu Sven. What can I do to truly show respect to the departed? What is the most beautiful thing, in your opinion, that you can imagine? How to be a force others can depend on? Is it enough to keep my word? Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you, sir, for your questions. Those are like beefy questions, right? They're very beefy questions. What can you do to truly show respect to the departed? Is um, the strangest thing about that is um, y- you don't really need to. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to ritually show respect to the departed if you already hold respect and love for them, right? The ritual is done for us, not for them, right? Um, a funny thing that an older gentleman once told me was, well, I asked him if they were, uh, you know, afraid of death because they were sat down and they were overlooking the graves of their parents, right? And well, that was the theme that we were speaking about. And he said, "You know what I think? I think if it was bad up there, someone would find a way to come back, right? Like to escape." So uh, it's us who are going through the trials and tribulations. Um, the departed, they are reconnected with the full meaning of their existences, so to speak. And in my mind, they can see and understand very well um, uh, uh, what you feel for them. And of course, you can show respect to their items. You can inherit those items. You can show symbolic respect at their graves, so on and so forth. A lot of times, butterflies will serve as spiritual messengers, or moths will serve as spiritual messengers that can be possessed by the spirits of the departed uh, to show gratitude. Um, that's also a thing, right? Um, some have misconstrued this as a sign of as a sign for possession in the darker realms of thought, right? Let's say the esoteric circles, but and there is, of course, a certain type of truth to that. Um, but yeah, primarily, if you want to show respect to the departed, is live in respect of them. And if you want to somehow symbolically showcase that respect, yes, like, take care of the grave, you know, visit them sometimes, connect with them mentally, right? Um, if you're talking about something that's like more specific, like, let's say if someone passed in your home and that sort of thing, movement, uh, open doors inside the house, right? a single open window in the house, um, allowance for movement, right, is something that the energy or the spirits of the departed before they move on from this realm appreciate. They don't appreciate dampness and being locked in, or even like, of course, like they can move through the door. You understand, like they're an energy, but the symbolic implication of that, they appreciate that. So that's why I tell everyone, don't ever be afraid of spirits or hearing something in the night or seeing something in the night. Um, Understand that these energies are interfacing with your fear, and that's why they're activating. Uh, this is a longer conversation. We'll talk about this later. There's a lot of info there that we could talk about. But yeah. Um, what is the most beautiful thing that you can imagine? Um, so uh, it's like a counter question to me because of my kaleidoscope uh, meditation method. And I can tell you, pouring some tea, sorry, that the most beautiful thing that I have seen or can imagine, I can't put it into words. But in an earthly sense, what the most beautiful thing I can imagine is New Earth, which I have seen in in my visions. That's probably the most beautiful thing I can imagine. That I'm able to communicate to a larger audience, so to speak. Um, how to be a force others can depend on isn't enough to keep my word. Well, it depends on your imprint, right? Sometimes you don't need to be the force others depend on because that's not your place. Now, if you're a man to a certain degree, of course, you will have that tag. You will carry that tag with you, especially in relation to family and friends, and the less and the and sort of like the lesser family, you can call it, right, or the weaker gender. But um, it is not enough to keep your word. It's more important, I would say, to be a reliable presence. When you say you're going to do something, do something. Uh, that's how you become dependable, right? No one has to police you around to do the things that they know that you will do because you're a man of your word, right? That's how you're a force others can depend on. When you're reliable and comfortably predictable, women love men that are comfortably predictable when it comes to responsibilities. So understand that too. Okay, let me look for another question. One second. Knight of the Round Table asks, does the universe go on forever? um, yes and no. Yes and no. If we mean the universe in the sense of our universe, I already posted this just a while back now, maybe even yesterday, that um, our world is under a law um, that forbids it from losing any sort of energy. So it means like when something is split from our world, something else must take its place immediately. And that's exactly what happens. Um, so when we say, does this world infinitely supply itself or resupply itself with new kinds of goodies? Yes. Does it have a beginning point and an end point? Uh, yes and no. Again, depends like from which dimensional aspect are you looking at it? If you mean the cosmos at large, does it go on forever? Well, I'll tell you what would happen if you reach the edge of the cosmos. So if you could quantum teleport to the very edge of the known space right now, today, if you could strip away everything, what would happen is the moment you got to the edge of the universe, you would print more of the universe. Like your very presence there um, would demand observable phenomena, and you would immediately print that phenomena. Why? Well, again, that's a larger conversation, but to answer you shortly, it's because most humans don't understand what the cosmos is. And what the cosmos is, it is a mirror of consciousness. You understand what I'm saying? It's the cosmos is the uh, conscious goodies of the collective minds of all sentient beings reflected back onto us on a macro scale. It is literally a mirror of our collective consciousness. That's why there's a Big Bang, which is the birth of the first awareness and the first consciousness that ever existed. What the scientists would call, the technocrats would call the Big Bang. And then there is an immediate and sudden outgrowth of that consciousness into planets and galaxies and universes and so on and so forth. It mirrors the growth of the awareness and consciousness of the being that started it all, so to speak. So, yes, in that sense, the universe does go on forever because the growth of consciousness also goes on forever. And that's why the universe is growing because it's a mental model. It's a reflector. Um, let's see. So, sometimes it feels like seeking out the truth is just another ego trap to fall into, but paradoxically, you must search out the truth to live a good life. What is the fine line? We must walk between knowing and not knowing the answers. Asks aloud. That's a good question. Again, like another, you guys are not giving me an easy time with these questions because these are like larger conversations that need like a separate lecture for each. I feel, but that's how much depth they have. But in short, um, you must understand that there are many layers to the truth. And then there are many truths and there are many laws that you're under. Like I always say, um, some people, right, are stuck, or most people are stuck on the very first layer of truth, which is their immediate consensus reality that they submit to by default. And then there is a second layer of truth where it is a belief based system, like it says in my book, uh, uh, the seven keys, right? It's a belief based system because for belief is the highest form of what you would call magic. So if you believed that some form of magic, some other form of magic, for example, astrology, formulaic system, if you believed that astrology superseded belief, right? For you in your life, it would supersede belief. But it would only supersede belief because belief is the highest form. So, regardless of what you believe is the highest form of magic, belief still ends up as the highest form of magic. Because whatever your world is and however your world is formed as the input output mechanism of your conscious thoughts is determined rather by what you choose to believe in, right? So, knowing that and having that key suddenly makes all kinds of like symbolics or symbolism or ritualistic magic and so on and so forth, all of that incredibly simple to understand. But you also have to understand that all forms that take shape in our world, symbolic forms, like for example, the letter I, right? That you can project things onto that letter, but it also carries an objective symbolic imprint in relation to the elemental forces of the makeup of the universe. So there is a constant interplay again between the masculine and feminine notions that things carry naturally, objectively imprinted symbolism and energy in their forms in relation to the language of the universe, which is geometrical and symbolic. But then there are also projections, interpretative and subjective projections, the feminine aspect that we can naturally throw at different things. So again, yes, the planet Saturn has an objective, symbolic implication that affects the lives of human beings. But then another layer of that is someone's subjective or interpretative idea of what that energy is. So that creates a sort of like a mirror effect. So understand that most people who imagine themselves as enlightened or awakened, or some people who are on ego trips, or they think they've experienced what they would call ego death, most of them are stuck in belief systems that they are inputting into the universe. And the universe is then outputting these belief systems back onto them. So, for example, if I say astrology supersedes all other magic and formulaic arts, and I truly believed it, because belief is the highest form of magic, that will be so. And in my life, how I would experience my life would be through the lens of astrology and or astronomy or whatever. And through that lens, life would feed my ego. It would give me all the proof I needed. It would give me every bit of evidence to accrue to know that I have figured out the secrets of the universe. I always speak about this. Like it feeds your ego because what is the function, the objective function of the three-dimensional, like dualistic layer of reality? It is to keep your ego satisfied, and it is to grow your ego because why? It is sustained by the egoic ideas and concepts of logic and boundary and chronology. So many people who go and try to find truth truly one shot themselves by not understanding the law of paradoxes and the law of belief. And then they will go and think, well, I've discovered the secret of the universe, time to spread my religious dogma to the world, time to spread my religion of astrology or whatever to the world, and make others also believe in it. Because when you make also others believe in it, and seeing as belief is the highest form of magic, it their effects are amplified, the effects of your quote unquote truth. Are you truly dealing in truth? No, you're still on layer two, which is a very low layer with the every other layer being put into consideration. So in truth, what you're doing is you're uh, necessitating the ego. You're you're stuck thinking that you found and figured out the secret of the universe and your life, thinking that you're achieving spiritual progress, but all you're truly achieving is the comfort, growth, and facilitation of your ego, the same ego that binds and chains you to this realm of living. And not only are you doing that to yourself, but now you're also doing it to others. There's only a few people who understand these concepts and choose to do the unethical regardless. Those are the true high level dark workers of our world, so to speak. Everyone else, they're just fooled by the mirror world, by the input output system, right? Um, so yes, the pursuit of truth can be an incredible ego trap if you don't understand what truth is. And we could talk about what truth is, but again, this is a larger conversation. But you have to be careful with what you're uh, pulled into believing or what you're willing to believe, because that belief can become your prison, as it is for, unfortunately, most people who feel that they've unlocked the meanings of life and unlocked the secrets of the world. If I say, if I attach symbolic meaning to, um, let's say, every day of my life, and I create a belief system that is based on some sort of archetypal, symbolic system, right? And then those days end up giving me feedback that feed my ego and tell me you were totally right. Let's say if I hold a belief that people in my country are very rude and dishonest, life will send me rude and dishonest people because can that sort of objective reality, objective truth manifest in my country? Of course. Even if it's a small part of its truth, it will manifest because I have conjured it up and I have summoned it into my world. And now it'll manifest and I will start meeting angry and dishonest people. And what will that do? That will feed my ego in the form of saying, well, Jack, Uncle Jack, you were right. These people are terrible, right? That will only strengthen my resolve. You understand? And by disillusionment with reality and by isolation from what's truly true will be complete. And my consciousness and my mental power will suffer from it, and my spirit will suffer from it. So you have to be very careful with these things. Okay, Eunice or Lunes asks, this is my first time hearing of you, so what connection do you see between physiognomy and mysticism? Do you think physiognomy can change? What do you think the root of physiognomy, being able to track traits through it, is? What comes first? How much do you think a way a person carries themselves affects physiognomy? I mean, we've mostly covered these questions. An interesting one is, what is the root of physiognomy? And physiognomy, like the face, is a an after delay. It's like a delayed effect of where the soul and the consciousness is going. So what we call in face reading, or in my way of face reading, deviations or the deviations layer, it shows an advancement, a progression towards something. And that little thing, that little progression, it can be used to predict where someone is coming from and where someone is going. So, of course, between physiognomy and mysticism, there's a large divine sort of connection between these two arts, right? Physiognomy and face reading in general is the language of the soul, human the human body as the vesseltry of consciousness, and the human tree uh, as the outwards, the resplendent outwards reflection of the inner natural state is a direct reflection of what a person is beyond what they even know themselves to be. So of course there's an incredible connection there. Yes, absolutely. Physiognomy can change, but imprints cannot. So let's differentiate these two things, right? There are imprints that cannot change or can only be changed through blunt force trauma or some sort of uh, surgery. And then there are elements which change all the time that we can read. But the face always goes where its destiny is, so to speak. Like these deviations always go towards where a person is going. And if they're strong enough, they become imprinted on the face permanently. It becomes part of their identity. How often does physiognomy lie? Never, almost never. Physiognomy only lies, you could say, like in a sense, where someone who embodies certain things that they're unaware of, which is incredibly rare. Like incredibly rare. This means that there's some sort of bipolar or schizophrenic or psychotic alter ego episode going on that is incredibly rare, but it could happen. Um, how can we find our elevated psychic ability? That's a good question. How do you think? Um, by how most magical things in your life are found by accident. So if you think you can force it, you can't, my dearest friend. How you find magic, how you choose your wand, you don't really choose it. It needs to choose you. It needs to find you. So if it hasn't found you yet, then it hasn't found you yet, and you must like expect it to be that way, and you must be able to accept it as well. So um, it will find you when the necessity is there, or maybe it has already found you, like in my case, and you just don't know it yet. So there's that. Uh, let's see. Pros and cons of having multiple wives. Oh, we're getting steamy now. From a mystical perspective, what differs from the monogamic nuclear family? Oh damn. Uh, wait, I have to blow my nose for this one. I'm so sick, you guys. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm incredibly sick, but I'm in a great mood. So okay, give me a second. Okay, so pros and cons of having multiple wives. I wouldn't know, firstly. um, is it acceptable to me to have multiple wives? So, um, on a biological level, I think the supreme coupling is one man and one woman on a biological level, because it is, let's say, even scientifically proven that biologically it enhances the health and the bodily function, the bodily health, the hormonal health of of both the man and the woman when they engage with monogamous, sexual intercourse. But I also don't have a tragic view on these things. I don't think in terms where I used to in the past, but I don't anymore. Where it says like this is how universe intended it to be, and this is how it should be, and this is natural, and that's unnatural. I imagine you could have, no limitations put on yourself. I imagine you could have a wonderful relationship with several women or several wives if all parties agree. Why not? Yes, you can have multiple wives. What are the pros and cons of it? Well, I would say it rather depends on the types of wives you have. and I think the pros are very clearly apparent, and the cons are more abstract in your case, right? Depending on the temperamental qualities of your many wives. So, from a mystical perspective, what differs from the monogamic nuclear family is that it is not, how to say, I wouldn't say it differs from the monogamic nuclear family in a mystical sense at all. As long as there is spiritual and mystical connection, I don't think it differs at all. You can have all kinds of different relationships. I always tell this to people that just because we've constructed, and I'm going to go off topic a little bit, but this is a very important point that you must learn. Again, especially when I'm done with the Art of Quiet Living book and when that's released, I talk at length about this. You must understand that just because we've constructed a consensus reality or consensus world or civilization or society that abides by certain ethics and rules in terms of what life should be and how relationships should be led, it doesn't mean that you have to adhere to these things uniquely, right? Or excessively. I always tell people make deals with people. They're like, oh, what? Sign a contract? No, don't sign a contract. Make deals with people. You know, you can go out on the street today, go to your, I don't know, like bread vendor or something like that, and make a deal with them. Like shake hands and be like, well, I'm gonna come, once every 3 days. I'm gonna pay you an extra $20, and you're gonna do this extra service for me, and that's just how we're gonna do it. I'm gonna gift you some money, and you're gonna gift me some bread, right? And they're like, "Whoa, that could happen." Yeah, that could happen. People can still gift things to each other, Like, you know what I mean? Like, everything is so misconstrued by law and like this sort of like unseen scripture that everything else has to abide to. But you also have to understand you can have true human connections and you can create something new or something completely different. You want to have a relationship with, I don't know, like seven females from which you only see four of them once a year, you can totally have that total relationship. Is there a limitation or boundary that's forcing you to not engage in something like this? Only societal expectations and propaganda and maybe the stigma that comes with a sort of a deviant lifestyle. But it's your private living, so you can keep that private as well. Like there are these wonderful things you can do and engage in with other people that allow you to connect with them on a deeper level. And most people will live and die without ever having engaged in such dynamics because they're only programmed and projected. It's projected onto them that a relationship, for example, has to look like a certain thing and feel like a certain thing, or a breakup has to feel and look like a certain thing. But it doesn't. It's up to you and everyone else involved to decide what that thing looks like. Miko asks, how's life? Well, life is increasingly beautiful, but also complex and difficult, right? For me personally, uh, I will never abandon the beauty and the sense of grandiosity I feel for life. But that doesn't mean that I also don't suffer from its, the mundane trivialities and also the darkness that comes with it, right? I'm also a human being. Uh, so, of course, like everything reverberates. I get sick just like anyone else. I have health issues sometimes, just like anyone else. I'm in a bad mood sometimes, or I'm grumpy, just like everyone else. So, no, life isn't all rainbows all the time. Um, uh, for let's say someone um, you'd imagine as I hate using that term, but spiritually advanced or whatever, anything like that. Life is life. That's what it is and how it is. If you can derive beauty from anything in your life, is the same as deriving meaning from anything in your life. So if something terrible happened to me, which many things have, and if something terrible has happened to you, how you beautify those things is that you understand their inner depth and the meaning behind it and the lesson behind it so that it can shape your current beauty, right? So life is always beautiful if you have the wisdom and the vision to see it as such. Any daily practice to develop your intuition? This is a wonderful question. Reading, imagination. Imagination and intuition go hand in hand. I imagine and I intuit. Read, envision, read. Don't read self help books. Self help books are some of the driest content you will ever read. I don't know why people love to read fiction, read fantasy, read things that put imagery in your mind. That'll help you increase your intuition. How can we know, Sean asks, how can we know what we truly desire, not what our ego desires, or do they both have to be addressed? Of course, they both have to be addressed and accepted, I would say. Um, what you desire is what your ego desires. And again, like, I feel like these things are so misconstrued by people who love to antagonize the ego, right? In a sense. Uh, the you, you you need to understand that your ego is not your enemy. It's a necessary formation of an identity caused by an amnesiac mind. And how you treat that identity is how it will treat you back. Does your ego sustain the material realm? Yes. Does your ego sustain collectively the boundaries of Abraxas, so to speak, which which is symbolic of the highest collective egoic knowledge of all mankind? Yes. Is it bad because it does this? No, because it's part of the grand divine theater. So what your ego desires is what you desire. It's more about understanding the why behind that and understanding why your ego desires it and then accepting it and then hopefully transcending it if you feel like it's something that requires transcending. It's more about that than splitting yourself from your ego and fighting it. Never fight your ego. Your ego is there to be integrated into the grander, miraculous matrix of possibilities that is your life. Your ego is just a self defense mechanism to give a temporary survivalist explanation for a world that is inherently inhospitable and hostile to its existence. That's why the ego mind forms. That's why the ego mind is torn from the grander understanding of the universe, right? It is the river between consciousness and non consciousness. So the ego is here to serve you as well, if you can allow it to do so. Um, X asks, when reflecting on traumatic childhood years, how can one gain clarity and move forward? Suppressed memories make it hard to come to conclusions through an unbiased POV. Really struggling with this, have not done a lot of inner work in this regard. So again, the best way that I've experienced, of course, like every case is very individual, and uh, I hate how I have to make disclaimers for all these things, but it really is important to understand that, right? And I really want everyone to understand that. Like, um, the very macro level way to handle your trauma is to understand the underlying metaphoric and symbolic meanings behind it, to understand what purpose they serve and are still serving or have served in the development of your current person or character. If you are able to see meaning where there was pain, if you're able to see lesson where there is hurt and trauma, if you are able to see character development where there is misfortune and death, you may transmute it into healing, and it will give you immense clarity. If you can see beauty in your darkest moments, then the suppressed memories will open back up. But there's a lot of inner work and symbolic work that needs to be. It's a psychological, it's a psychotherapeutic process that needs careful and cautious unfolding, and it needs a certain type of self guidance, self therapy, but also maybe external guidance and therapy that will help you unravel the suppressed memories. Again, you know what the portal to that memory is. And I've explained this in the past how memories work. Like, if I go out on the street today and I see a red car, what's my mind going to attach to? What is it going to remember? It's going to most vividly remember the red car because it's unlike all of the other cars. So 1 month from now, if I'm recalling that memory again, my mind is going to recall, remember that time when we went out on the street and there was a red car? And it will remember the red car. It will remember its geometry, where it was located, where it was positioned, where it was coming from. And then the mind will reconstruct an imaginary or illusory layer of all of the other pieces of the memory. Your mind, in truth, does not remember 90% of the exact phenomena that happened less than, like more than 3 or 2 days ago. Which is a scary thought for some people, but it's really not. When the mind reconstructs a memory, it needs a totem or a memento that it uses to reconstruct this memory. This is the portal switch to your memory. So if you have suppressed memories, you know exactly where your mind needs to go to click that little button to trigger the rebuilding or the mental reconstructing of that memory that you have suppressed. And sometimes, if you want to go to that place, it's a place of filth, and it's a place of deep pain and trauma. It's a place you don't want to go. But if you can allow yourself to go and then derive meaning from all the terrible things that have happened to you, and again, I don't say this from a high horse. I say that as someone who has had terrible things happen to me, many terrible things in my childhood, for example, in life. You're able to unlock that, unblock that, and um, beautify it and make it meaningful as part of who you are. If it brings shame or disgust or disgrace or pathetic self view, it doesn't matter because you can change its function. Right now, its function is to hurt you or make or sap your energy. but it can gain a new function, and that new function can empower you instead. So yes, you are able to quite literally change the destination given to you by your past by changing your perspective. Masquerade asks, "How have you been doing, Uncle Jack?" I've been doing okay. I'm really sick for the past week, as you can tell, but I'm not complaining. You know, every day I wake up, uh, and I'm given the capacity to experience the beauty of it all. So I can't, even if I was dying, I wouldn't complain. Uh, all that power asks if in one of your spaces you mentioned that women with their upper gums being visible while smiling can be quote unquote problematic. What about men with this feature? That's a good question. Let me take a sip of my tea and I will answer it. Um, so in the past, I had like weird ways of saying things. Uh, so when I say like women with those types of gums showing could be problematic, what I mean is that um, when a woman has that trait on her physiognomy, especially if it's like very defined, um, it doesn't. It shows a lower quality of intellect usually. Like their IQ is probably lower, and women like that also tend to be a little bit more disloyal than others, right? Um, Now I could go into detail, like explaining why that is, but if you just want like the basic truth, that's it. So it like they have other qualities, of course, that uh, make it beneficial in a certain realm, right? Like they're very impressionable, women like that. They're very very impressionable, and they're very very simple sometimes. Not simple minded. I'm not saying they don't have depth of mind. I'm saying that both their desires and their means of fulfilling those desires are very straightforward and relatively direct and simple. So, of course, like there are many other elements and features that give more context, but that in particular, right? Yes, they can be problematic in the sense where they tend to be slightly more disloyal and slightly less intellectually uh, uh, advanced. What about men with this feature? So, of course, it you already know the energy of the feature, so obviously, like uh, it doesn't manifest as disloyalty in men or anything like that. Actually, it's so funny because in men it manifests as increased loyalty and uh, uh, an increased impressionability as well. So these are also men who are rather impressionable, and they become im- uh, impressed by their male peers, or they tend to idolize, right? Uh, and then they tend to walk in the footsteps of the men that they idolize. Again, like it's a sign of being impressionable, and not necessarily the most intellectually advanced, but men like that can be very good friends and highly loyal. Um, but don't expect them to, you know, be astrophysicists, so to speak, right? I'm not saying they can't, by the way. Anyone can. Can have the capacity to will themselves into a position. So I'm not saying that at all, but the general default imprint and status quo, yes, it's going to be like that. Let's see. What do attractive people have internally that separates them from the unattractive? Terminator 00 is asking. Um, well, it depends on how we. Hello, Rage. Welcome. So yeah, it depends on how we define attraction, right? So we already spoke about imprints and embodying your imprint or embodying the opposite of your imprint. Um, Attraction is something that's created from comfort or contrast. Understand that. That's the most important thing you have to understand about attraction. So if someone is comfortable to look at and if someone is comfortable in their energy and predictable and reliable, that creates symmetry of attraction, a direct line of communication. But if someone is contrasting, that creates a mystique and that also creates an attraction. One is a feminine type of attraction, the direct attraction, and one is a masculine type of attraction, which is contrasting ends, contrasting opposites. So you might think that the direct form of attraction would be the masculine form of attraction, but that is not true because these things are inverted when it comes to social dynamics between human beings. So understand that, yes, someone who is naturally symmetrically aligned in their physiognomy will be objectively more naturally attractive, but someone who is symmetrically misaligned, for example, the more contrast they are able to create, the more they are able to embody the opposite of their physiognomy, the more attraction or mystique they will gain. So it doesn't necessarily, like, it depends on who we're talking about. So if we're talking about attractive people who have internally, well, they have objectively observable symmetry that makes them attractive, but only if they embody that attraction. If you ever met an attractive person who you were not attracted to at all, it's because they failed to embody that. That could happen too, although it's like far more difficult for that to happen, far more rare for that to happen, because naturally attractive people are naturally, confidently embodying who they are. It's just their natural state. But then, the most terrible advice you can give to someone as an attractive person who comes to you and says, "Well, Uncle Jack, I don't feel attractive. I know I'm not objectively the most attractive the person." And let's say I'll tell them, "Well, my friend, just be yourself." That's not good advice, right? Because, well, I would think that worked because I'm just being myself and everyone's attracted to me, right? So, it doesn't necessarily equate to the idea that, like, be authentic. Of course, everyone has to be authentic, right? But sometimes being yourself goes against your attraction. Your point of attraction goes against your contrast. You understand? So, for example, if I have a lot of pink in my room, I need another color to balance the pink out to create a beautiful contrast. You understand what I'm saying? So, um, for example, if I tell someone, "Hey, man, you're this and that way objectively. How about you embody the opposite of your imprint? How about you embody something that um, will create this mystical element, give you this mystical element, right? You could be objectively the ugliest person in the room with the most riz, so to speak, right? So once you understand that, you know that attraction is about either comfort or contrast. Both are incredibly attractive. Depends on what imprint you have, how you work it, you're going to be super attractive, right? You're going to, what I call, winning the gaze, especially if you're a man. A lot of men ask this question, right? Especially if you're a man and you want to uh, win the gaze, what I call, of females, right? You want to win the gaze, what I call is like, um, you never approach a female truly. When you're at the height of your energy, you don't have to approach anyone, you don't have to talk to anyone to gain their validation. You just have to win their gaze. And winning a woman's gaze is basically the same as like walking into a room and um, being unapologetic with your gaze. And if the gaze is returned, then you've won the gaze, and you don't even have to say a word. Just, everything's already on from that point on. So that mystique is formed either again by comfort, if you have a symmetrical face, and if you have symmetrical alignment on your physiognomy, or through contrast, if you have asymmetry on your face. Can you really trust someone fully again after knowing they lied to you? Asks Sammy. Um, can you? Well, I know I can. No, I have many times, right? And all the soap operas and the TV shows want to convince me that I shouldn't, but I know I have many times, and I've been bitten on the ass from it too. But I've also been rewarded for it as well. You know, some of my best friends are those people who've screwed me over the most once or twice in life, and I've forgiven them, and I've just decided that I'm going to trust them fully again, and I have, and some of them have ended up being great for me. You know, I don't believe in locking people away into their mistakes because they're always going to prove you right if you do that. Um, but be careful of the consequences. Like, you also have to understand, if someone has betrayed you or lied to you in the past, they might do it again. So be prepared for the pain. Because I am psychologically prepared for the pain of betrayal, because I know that I can take it, and I will be okay with it. I don't need it, so to speak. I'm ready to forgive almost anyone, and I'm ready to trust fully again, uh, after knowing they lied to me. It changes a person, right? Um, it will change if they truly care for you as well, and if they've made a genuine mistake. Just see them change and unfold and unravel and blossom in front of your eyes in real time after you given them that trust back and breathes life back into them. So there you go. That's my answer to that, I guess. What do you do about intrusive and ruminating thoughts constantly? I accept them. Um, and then I ask the question, why are you here? Why are they there? What are you here to signify? What are you here to distort? What are you here to teach me? And eventually they go away. Do you know when fear goes away, for example? Like, if you have a fear of elevators, you know when it goes away. It doesn't go away when you decide for it to go away. It goes away when you get bored of it. Right? So the intrusive and the ruminating thoughts, let them intrude, let them ruminate or whatever. Let them live and breathe, and they're gonna get bored of themselves. Believe you me. Mm. Do you consider life to be harder or is easier than death and the afterlife? I believe harder than I think it's close. Well, yes, of course. You know, death is rather easy and life is rather hard, but we have to also consider that life and death are not opposites. Life is not the opposite of death. Death is not the opposite of life. Birth is the opposite of death. Life is eternal. Um, Do you ever have any doubt that God is real slash afterlife is real? Is there factual proof you found of anything? From my current understanding, I don't have any concrete evidence besides assumptions, way more likely than the alternative, so I shrug off the doubt to keep faith strong. Well, if you understand the law of paradoxes, and you will if you stay on track, unlock spiritual truths, you will very quickly come to realize that having doubt in the existence of the afterlife is the proof of the afterlife. Like I always say, the fact that we cannot prove the existence of God is the proof of the existence of God. You could repeat that 100 billion times until you truly understand it. Or you can just say it once and immediately understand it, and understand that that's all the proof you need. Again, study our world, study the symbolic functional meaning of the three-dimensional realm we live in, right? Why does faith as a sentiment even exist in our realm? Our realm is designed to facilitate faith and to facilitate not knowing. You can only have faith about things you don't know. And that the lesson of faith is incredibly immense. The lesson of faith is so grand and so great. Um, you must be hopelessly faithful in the face of all things, even doubt. And you have to accept the doubt because it's part of your faith. So, is there factual proof? I have found, if anything, there are many personal, foundational, factual proofs that I have been given, again, like I talk about in the Seven Keys book. Uh, uh, there is a personal truth to be attained about the meaning of life and the existence of God, but it will never be impersonal. It will never be collectively consumed because that is the design and the laws under which our world exists. Um, if you don't have concrete evidence beside assumptions, that's okay, but you can gain that evidence through readiness. Um, there's no need to shrug off the doubt. You need to also embrace the doubt and see where that line of thought leads you. Um, your doubt is your faith in disguise. Um, let's see. You've said in a post that old souls suffer from poverty disease until 18 and soul crushing lessons until 30, and then it's fun times easy. So a lot of a lot of people underestimate that post, and I wish I had said it a different way when I did. Those are very basic templates, like very macro scale templates. So yes, like if you're an older soul, you naturally after 30, you're able to to truly relax and understand the weight of everything. But if you're a younger soul, you're born into this world in awe, so to speak, right? And it's not always the case. It's what I want to say. And I wish I had put that in the post. It's the general advancement and progression of things. I'm not saying after 30, life gets easy. I'm saying for older souls after 30, life gets meaningful. And for younger souls, life tends to get more meaningless after 30 because they are yet to be equipped with the generational inheritance of knowledge and wisdom and esoteric, inherent, innate, intuitive knowing or whatever that they require to make sense of the things in their life because most of their life has just been a contrasting having fun, right? That's why. Um, The Sage of War asks, is competing in combat sports low vibrational and not ideal in the path to enlightenment? Um, de- depends on the degree. So um, I'm a little bit biased, I think, because again, I love martial arts and I have loved martial arts for a very long time. And I practiced a lot of martial arts and different types. And I love watching combat sports as an art form even now. Any kind of combat sport. So, is it low vibrational? It can be very low vibrational in the sense where there is no honor, there is no mercy, there is excessive brutal violence. But it can also be high vibrational if there is honor and dignity and virtue, and if there is um, holding back in the face of victory, if there is um, the whenever a combat sports goes beyond the strengthening of each competing man's will, strength, and self mastery, and it just turns to brutal violence, then it turns very low vibrational, yes. But if there is an increase in strength and mastery, then it is not low vibrational, in my humble opinion, at all. There is beauty and darkness found in everything, in all things. Rising Knight asks, you often refer to yourself as we. You always choose your words so carefully. Who are the entities you work with? I say we in the sense of collective, man or humanity, or sometimes I'll say we when I'm talking to someone, so they don't feel alone in there. I'll always say that like, well, we have a lot to work on our communication or communicative function, and I say we as in sense of them, of course, but I say that so they don't feel alone in their task. I don't work with any entities, any entities. I don't. I have. I don't attempt to channel any entities. I don't attempt to make contact with any entities. Sometimes, some aspects will make contact with me, but even that is sparingly about some things that are important or to be known or a message. I don't uh, manually or consciously work with any entities, and I don't ever desire to, even though I might be capable of doing so, because I don't need it. I always say the final lesson of magic is that it is not necessary. If you truly understand magic and what magic is, the formulaic and the ritualistic part of it, you will understand that its highest lesson is that it is absolutely non-essential. It's not necessary. Um, and I will touch on this as well. Working with entities is, and even the darker aspect of that, the demonological aspect of that, is nothing more than working with dormant elements of the collective subconscious and your personal unconscious as well. You understand? So it is the adherence to and the formation of different lines of thinking that are dormant, so not realized in the conscious as a conscious thought form. So um, you don't need any bridges to any mental state. You are the bridge. I know it's very edgy to claim that you work with this or that entity, and some people even give them names and da da da. Da. Uh, no, to me that's child's play. It has its place in time, but to me that's child's play. Now, if we're talking about actual existing, right? So that are beyond the human unconscious. If you're talking about actually existing uh, forms of life, then yes, there are some people who are akin to uh, amplifiers who are naturally connected to this or that specific phenomena or something like that. But not me, never been that. And I don't wish it on myself. I already have my plate full with my quirks and strangenesses, right? Um, how do you cope with high emotional sensitivity? Can I do anything beside Kurt my loins? So for the longest time, I couldn't cope with it because I'm incredibly emotionally sensitive and intuitive in that sense. But yeah, the answer is emotional mastery. You need to become unmoved by your emotions because your emotions are going to be incredibly potent and strong. It takes time and a lot of suffering, admittedly, and it's not. It doesn't have a good effect on your body. You know, you get all kinds of like weird little conditions and sicknesses from being so emotionally involved, and I've suffered the brunt of that myself. But emotional mastery to a degree where you can control it. But sometimes if you're super high emotionally sensitive, you can't even control it. And it just comes with the territory. You can't even now, like I would say that I have an incredible ability to emotionally self-regulate, but I can still never fully, because sometimes like when you receive like feeling an energy or potent energy or some sort of vision, or you get sucked into some sort of I'll even like cry some like like it's It's overwhelming emotion. Even the saints cried and laughed and danced and everything. So you just surrender to it while remaining cautious and carefully in control, I would say. So learn to surrender to it and not think of it as something naturally like tragic or bad. Accept it, but also be able to control it after you've surrendered to it. It's okay to surrender to an emotion for a time, but it's never okay to allow the emotion to lead you into like psychosis or schizophrenia, right? Um, and surrendering is also like very underrated. Like, let's say if you're making love with your partner who you love, you want to surrender to the moment. You want to surrender to the emotion of love. There's nothing wrong with surrendering to it for a moment of passion, right? But then you must pull yourself back together again. You must have that ability. Um, Where can I study the fundamentals of Feng Shui? Des asks. Any masters following the book suggestions? Any key things that one should be mindful of when it comes to living near water? How about must-haves regarding sleep? So Feng Shui, I don't know. I know it's. I know people think I know Feng Shui like really well because I talk about like making your home a specific place, but I don't. I just know like the very basics. Um, Mindful of when it comes to living near water, where it depends if it's like resting water or running water. It largely depends. Yeah, no whistling in the house, right? You'd have to ask me, or you have to tell me more, Des, about your specific situation, like where you live and that type of thing, for me to give you a good answer on that. But generally, like near water, uh, avoid damp things in your house. Like I always tell this, like anything that's wet, damp, abandoned, just clean it up, avoid it. Anything that's like a leaking pipe, avoid it. Anything that's rusting, just like get rid of it or avoid it or fix it or give it some love. Um, um, any advice on finding your mission or purpose from Chino? Um, it's already there. You already know it. The four directors of life, like we talked about: ambition, desire, intuition, and conscience. These four things help you align on your mission the most. Your ambition will tell you the heights you wish to go to. Your desire will tell you inherently what you want without even knowing what you want. What is your desire? And the marriage of those two things, ambitions and desire, will grant you enthusiasm. And then your intuition will help realign you when you've beaten off the path. And your conscience will hold you back when you're going too excessively far. So if you have those two things, you already know your life's mission and purpose. Just follow that compass. I have so many questions. Um, Let me see. What action or behaviors should one adopt so that your woman sees you as her guide and respects you and follows you and trusts your discernment? Uh, that's a good question. Um, the general understanding is this: as a man, if you change your behavior or alter your behavior or anything you do outside of what you normally do for the sake of impressing women, you will get everything but impressing the woman, right? Women notice that, like, a lot of men like talk about women like they're these dumb beings that don't know anything, and that's so wrong, and it's usually men who talk about women this way who only interact and interface with the lowest cast of women. They can never truly attract the attention of really high quality women. And then they're convinced that like all women are like stupid or silly or whatever. Women are incredibly observant, highly intuitive, and they literally mature and grow faster than you by several years. What do you think? Like, do you think a woman wouldn't notice if you were enhancing or altering your behavior, like specifically to impress them? They would take that as a lie, so to speak. Some might think it's cute, but others might look at it as a lie. So you have to understand that you shouldn't adopt any actions or behaviors that are not natural to your actions and behaviors. All you have to do is, again, comfort or contrast. Women love a reliable, comfortable presence, but they also love a contrasting presence where um, you're you're truly different, or you're truly yourself with them, like unapologetically. So when a man is afraid of rejection, relatively he becomes unavailable, like to most women. Like he's not, his validity in the eyes of women lessens. Um, because what are you afraid of, right? Like being rejected by someone. If you're being authentic, right, that should make you happy. Yeah, because if someone rejects your authentic self, it means that they are not a natural attraction, right? That they're not naturally synced up with you, most likely. And if you find some specific person attractive or hot or whatever, all you have to do is tell them and be authentic about it. If you find someone sexually attractive, but not romantically attractive, you can go and tell them and be authentic about it. It's relatively simple. It's that simple, really. Um, Never change an action or behavior as a man for the sake of a woman. You will never achieve any good results from that. Um, do what makes you inspired and what gives you enthusiasm, and you will always have women following you. Always. And they'll always be the type of women you like and respect, because they will share common mutual interests with you. Always. Why would any woman follow you who doesn't respect you and appreciate you already? But you have to be going somewhere for that to happen, right? You have to be going. So in truth, like men think like there's a lot of fish in the sea, there's many options. But if you look at it from a lens of like women who you can truly respect and like back, right? Um, you do realize, like, let's say once you've slept with like 50 plus women or whatever, at some point in your life, you will have understood that there is only a specific type of female that you're attracted to and that you naturally like. So then your dating pool, so to speak, right, uh, lessens and lessens, it becomes smaller and smaller. But then you also understand that if you become a specific type of tree that casts a specific type of shadow, the specific type of woman who will appreciate that tree and its shadow will come and nest, uh, under it, so to speak. So y- just be inspired, be enthusiastic, build something beautiful, and the women will come. The success on the sexual marketplace is a symptom of your authenticity to yourself. That's all it is. Veritas asks, "How do you like to start your mornings?" Oh man, so I'm not a morning person, and with me being sick now for the past week or two, I do it with I visualize a lot, um, but it's never something specific or deliberate. Um, and then I'll pour myself some tea. Uh, I'll go clean up, and I will go and immediately attack all of the responsibilities that I have that I don't feel like doing during the day. I'll be honest with you. So if I have to go and buy groceries, I'll go do that. Like I will always do the most annoying and irritating and difficult things in the morning. Uh, uh, and that's how I win time as well. It's a very Saturnian way of doing it, right? It's also how I allow time to pass quickly because I'm rushing through all of these responsibilities that I have to do, and I want to do them fast. And you're so empowered. So, uh, if you're asking me if I do yoga for half an hour, like after I wake up, no, I don't. I literally fly out of bed. I'll have my morning coffee or tea, and I'll have my breakfast, and I'll just attack everything I need to do. I get it done, and then I can finally start enjoying my day. What is love? Lover asks. It was so thematic. What a thematic question. Love is the unmistakable noticing and rejoicing of the fact um, that you see yourself mirrored in the other, right? Like, love is an innate understanding that you are at one with another through infinities. That's what love is, and you can feel love towards anyone and anything. Of course, some people make it more difficult to feel love for them, and others make it more easy and comfortable. But love is the appreciation of, the understanding of, the notion and the sentiment that you and something else is one and the same. Right? Um, it's an incredible force that transcends time itself. It is the portal key that allows you to reach into realms that should not be. It's a miracle because it's a portal from that allows you to reach into realms that are inaccessible or should be inaccessible for humans to do so. It is not an emotion. It could be debased on it to an emotional degree, to an emotional level. The Greeks will tell you about that. But love in its highest form is unity with specific things and then unity with the all. So it allows you out of time, out of bounds, out of logic, through miraculous swaying of reality to connect with things on a deep, deep layer that transcends every law and limitation. We speak about the law of paradox and every law. Love is the force that can transcend every law that exists in our realm. It's the cheat code. Okay, let's see if I missed anything. Man, we answered a lot of questions, didn't we? Why does someone cheat? Why does someone cheat us when it comes to money and don't return our money? Um, Same thing there, man. What is the lesson that's trying to teach you? How is that your character development? How does it progress your soul? Ask that, and all shall be revealed. It's really that simple. Um, yeah, I don't think we missed. Dermore, uh, my good friend, asks, can you share your view on archetypes, mind, and consciousness? Uh, Man, I have a lot of views on archetypes. Like obviously the universe and the material realm is a collection of avatarized archetypal ideas that are sort of like frozen into matter, right? And um, even when I did the formulaic version for my physiognomy system, I chose to do it through, um, uh, an archetypal system, right? Um, so my thoughts on archetypes is that there are inherent archetypes that exist, and then there are sub archetypes that exist below, like under those archetypes. There is a first archetype, like let's say in physiognomy, what I call the Adam imprint, that is the initial archetypical source of everything. But then you can break down into subcategories, and then those into subcategories, and so on and so forth, right? And if you follow the rule of threes, where everything is a sum of three parts, like we teach, then you can break down the Adamic archetype into three sub archetypes, and then those to another three, and those to another three, and those to another three, and another three, and so on and so forth. So, man, it's like a probably like a 4 or 5 hour conversation about mind consciousness if we really want to like dive deep into it. But yes, I believe that archetypal forces, archetypal systems, archetypal symbols, archetypal meanings, they naturally exist. And of course, archetypal stories, as we talked about, they also exist. For example, an archetypal story, like we said, is uh, an understanding of the underlying symbolic meanings and narratives that occur within existence itself. So, for example, an archetypal story, like we said, is the birth of a human, the aging of human, and the dying of human. This is an archetypal story that is ingrained, inherent within the design of the cosmos and the universe. Um, and every other sub story, every other reinterpretation of that archetypal story, again, is a reinterpretation of it. Meaning that most of our human stories stem from those archetypal realities that we are then born into. We derive meaning and symbolism those from those things. Um, and about the mind and the consciousness, I have so many thoughts, and to be honest about that, and not even thoughts like if I'm honest, like to me, they're not thoughts; they're just truths. It's just difficult to put them into like one or two sentences or like a paragraph. Perhaps you and I, Dermot, my friend, you and I can make a spaces together about that because to me you're an astounding, you're a very interesting persona as well. And we could have a conversation, like an extensive conversation about mind and consciousness. But yeah, to say it plainly, of course, there are archetypal narratives that are given form and shape that is avatarized by in terms of different temperaments and um, materia, so to speak, um, in our world, which is fascinating, right? And not only in our world, but these archetypal forms are also avatarized by humans in their physiognomy, like let's say in face reading. These influences, these external, outward, inherent influences that exist are also then also become manifest in the physiognomy and the physiology of men and women. All right, last one. Um, Lord of Excellence here as asking, how do you find something to be enthusiastic about when you have lost enthusiasm for most things you were enthusiastic about in the past? Well, that's a good question. And, we talk about loss of purpose or, um, um, how to say, when you talk about having lost your enthusiasm, it's not because there's nothing that remains that you can be enthusiastic about, but it's more about exposing yourself to things that could spark your enthusiasm. So if you find yourself bored, right, um, it's probably you making yourself bored. Uh, like, how do I say this? Like, if I'm sitting in a room where nothing excites me, is it my fault that I'm not excited, or is it the fault of the room? And most people who are pseudo spiritualistic, they would tell you, of course, it's your problem. You cannot envision something that's. But why must we think in radicals? Like, why must we think in those ways where I could tell you that, you know what? Uh, to a degree, like ultimately, it probably could be your fault because innately you should be able to find a spark of interest in something new. It should live inside. But we all know that that's not the reality. The reality of the matter is that The external world exists as a trigger of inspiration. Um, and this is the last rant I'm going to go on today, swear to God, because I'm tired. But um, if I just move you to another room, right, where there are many new things to look at, you might find your enthusiasm the easy way. And I think you should. If nothing makes you enthusiastic, then try new things. Go step into a new room. Do not antagonize the function and the usefulness of the external world. I don't like when people say that, like, as if everything you do in life requires some sort of spiritual mastery and nothing else matters, because that's the territory a lot of especially Eastern spiritual gurus like to tread, where like, yeah, you can put me in a, yeah, in a, I don't know, like a hole full of mud and I will still be, yes, that's highly impressive, but that also takes immense practice and willpower. And let's not lie that it doesn't take willpower. It does. Um, we did not come into this world to suffer only. And that's why these uh, ascetic types usually default to the trauma trap of life as suffering, and it's something that needs to be escaped from, because all they know is how great they are in the face of this terrible thing that is suffering. But life doesn't have to be suffering. You can just move to another room and allow that room to inspire from the external, right? Your internal world. This is why we build our spaceships and we make our home a beautiful place to live in. Because when you are struggling and not at your best, it is when the beautiful things around you can inspire you and give back to you in that form to find new meaning in life. So detach everything from yourself, like detach your senses, your body, your emotions, your living, your everyday. Put yourself in a dark point of space where not a single star is visible in the empty void in front of you and behind you. Like put yourself in that place and remove everything, all sound, all pleasure, joy, hatred, filth. What really are you there, right? What do you exist as in that, within that element? Um, the expectation the guru puts on you, and that himself most likely, because they're inauthentic to themselves probably, is that you should exist in a void emptiness of meaning, devoid of any external um, trigger or inspiration or activator, and that you should somehow remain completely still and completely unmoved and fine. But you didn't come to this world to be unmoved and fine. You were already in a world that was unmoved and fine. You came into this world to be moved and to not be fine. You understand? Like, so do not antagonize the material realm, because the material realm is realer than, or denser, I should say, than anything else that exists. It's just as real as you and I. So this whole idea that, like, oh, we live in this matrix, no, 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 it's just an outwards reflection of everything you are and they are, including the guru who is teaching you those teachings. So um, allow a change of environment to inspire you internally. There's nothing wrong with doing that. We can't expect ourselves to be um, infinite, constant masters of all emotional states in every single infinite timeline. We wouldn't be here if you wouldn't be here if you were already that. So why would you put the standard, such high standard of mastery, to someone who is naturally and spiritually unable to attain it? Someone who is a part of a human collective that cannot advance beyond a certain point of spiritual progress if they don't advance together. We're all just here walking each other home. We're here together because we can only attain spiritual advancement and mastery together. We're not alone equipped to go to those heights. You are able alone, of course, to go to great heights of mastery, but the final level of mastery in this realm, in the three-dimensional realm, is a spontaneous and immediate understanding that there are some places you cannot go to alone because you are at one with the rest, the collective of mankind. Because you're at one with the collective of mankind, your mission, therefore, and the mission of every ascended master ever who has graced this world becomes the elevation of the whole, sometimes even at the cost of themselves. That's why faith and belief and religious stories and spiritual stories always talk about those who put the collective first, even beyond their own selves, because they are enlightened and they understand that the collective, including the material world and all of its sufferings and brutalities and darkness and hatreds and so on and so forth, are an inherent part of who they are and what they belong to. Um, So yeah, just change your environment. Is what I'm saying, right? Move to another room. Go do something you never try doing. Go read a book you never find yourself reading. I always say like people who read a lot of fiction, I tell them, well, go read a self-help book for once. Or people who read self-help books, I'll tell them, go read fiction or fantasy ones. Do you think fantasy is ridiculous? It's not real. The lessons of it are real. Do you know that most fantasy or most higher works of fantasy are channeled from alternative timelines? Do you know that that is true? Do you know that these symbolic archetypal stories belong to the inherent symbolic meanings and designs and narratives of the creation of the very world you live in today? No, you don't, because you underestimate the spiritual and philosophical depth of a work that you are unable to yet understand. So do something you wouldn't otherwise do and find yourself um, exposed to new things, and meaning will find its way back into your life. It always works that way, at least it has for me. And while you're in the dark, while you're in sort of like a dark path and you can't see any enthusiasm or light, be enthusiastic about becoming enthusiastic. Right? That's an enthusiastic thing to be, right? Even when you're not enthusiastic. Um, all right, that's it, guys. I gotta go take care of myself. My cold uh, is turning into a fever, so I'm gonna go. Old Uncle Jack is gonna go take care of his old Uncle Jack bones. And I hope you all have a great day. And I know I haven't been active as much recently, but it's a strange time. For anyone listening who's bought a face reading, they will be done either today or tomorrow. If you do buy a new one, please know that we'll need at least like 2 or 3 weeks or so to get it done for you. So much love to everyone. Hope you're doing well and build that spaceship, baby. Let's go.